First question. Did you see this coming?
Yes, I mean, yes and no. Did we think that a new regime change, at the top was going to reevaluate all of its key leaders and key positions? Of course, right? Like that makes a lot of sense. It would be like, a new general manager of a basketball team coming in and saying, hey, we're going to reevaluate the coach on the field. That's maybe we'll give them a season, maybe we'll give them 2 seasons, maybe we'll give them 10 days. And, every leadership is going to be, is going to evaluate its key positions. And Dave obviously was a very key position. So, yeah, I mean, I could see it coming from the sense of, sure. I thought that would be something that Rosa would want to consider as it's such an integral role in the sport.
But not that he would wait a year and a half.
Not that he would. Well, if he was going to do it, it's clear that they gave him an opportunity or a time to work together with the team, make a decision, look at that. And we don't know exactly what the metrics are that they ultimately that caused him to make this decision. So saw it the potential of it coming? Sure. Did I think that I was going to hear about this last night when I was sitting down at 9 p.m.? No, I didn't think I was getting a text message, especially not 7 weeks before the Open was about to kick off. If this had happened 60 days after the CrossFit Games, which ended back in August, 6 months ago, 5 months ago, then yeah, I could see that being more of a time frame, less so 7 weeks before the Open's about to kick off, and effectively the start of the season.
So, what can you tell us about when you say, working with the team, as in, like, hey, maybe he's not my first choice, but let's see, see if this guy can work with us, or
I haven't talked to Rosa personally about this situation, or about Dave in general, or about the games team in general, more specifically. But what I would infer from a situation like this is that you take over the company, which is this massive global, not only sport but community and business, and the games isn't like this burning house, right? That the games is going on. There's the middle of COVID. They have 2020 CrossFit Games that happen remotely, and then an limited in-person competition in Aromas, and it's kind of probably I'm inferring some things here. Probably said, look, this thing's taking care of itself. Let's let the games team do what it's meant to do, and we'll reevaluate the efficacy of how the games is operated, both from a business perspective or perhaps from a growth or efficacy perspective, whatever metrics that they had. Well, they have a board. They have key executives. This is now much more of a corporation than when Greg was running the company. And, they're going to begin to evaluate all aspects of the company and looking at that for pro growth opportunities. So they're going to look at that from financial opportunity. I think they're going to look at that from a reach, from a partnership standpoint opportunity. So it's hard to know without having heard directly more than just the letter that we've seen circulate to CrossFit employees last night as to what would be the catalyst for that. I think it's just one of the big questions is timing. Why now? Why 7 weeks before the Open? And it's clear from what we saw over the last week, which is Dave and the game's social media accounts posting, hey, workouts are complete, and he talked a little bit on camera about that, and he showed one of the athletes working lying on the ground, sort of writhing in pain, which is common what we see during CrossFit Open workouts, and saying, hey, the workouts, the workouts in the programming is completed, and you guys are going to love them, but you're going to hate them, and that's kind of what we come to expect with the CrossFit Open. And then so it's clear from that statement, from that video, that Dave didn't see this coming, that Dave wasn't expecting this to happen, or that had this inkling that sort of the games or the leadership staff is reevaluating my role and my position inside of CrossFit. It would be that would be an odd piece of media to put out if he felt like that was the case. And I think we can infer from that there was a bit of a surprise that came sort of out of the blue.
Well, I want to read what Dave actually wrote, because it's sure. It's very interesting. I always get an Armin because he'll hop on his video and he'll just read stuff, and I'm like, why are you doing that to us? We can read on our own. So I will acknowledge that, but this is short. I have talked to Rosa once in the last 3 or so months during his time away. He called me tonight to fire me. He told me they had message prepared that it was mutual. I asked him not to use that, because it couldn't be further from the truth. Now, let's address the first sentence. What was his time away? Did we know Rosa was away? What was Rosa doing the last
Yeah,
week?
we do know that he was away, at least to a certain extent. He made some public comments, and we reported on them that he was taking some time away from his leadership position to seek more treatment for depression, and he was open about that and some struggles with depression that he'd been going through. I don't know exactly what that date was. I think we articulated that a little bit in the article. And we kind of read into, inferred that his last sort of public appearance was around the launch of their precision health care, and that was the last time we really saw him visually. He did an interview with Julie Fouché, Dr. Julie Fouché, and that was kind of the last time the CrossFit public saw him post anything publicly or release any sort of statements until this email that he sent to employees. So he's sort of been out of the public
Can I make it? I'm going to speculate, J-Lo. I'm going to speculate.
Away.
I've spent a lot of time dealing with mental health. I've spent a lot of time working on myself over the years. One of the biggest things that comes up with people, I think, around this is like this is 100% speculation, just personal experience. One decides there's people they want in and out of their lives. Like, you know what? I'm quitting this job because it clearly is doing more damage to my overall mental health than it does good. Or I'm cutting off my mom or my dad or this cousin that never has anything positive to say. Maybe he came back from this mental health break with a what's the word? An aha moment of, this guy's bringing me more stress than not. And you know what? It's time for him to go.
That could well be the case. It's really hard to speculate at this point because up until this point, we didn't have any indication that he'd returned to active duty to actively managing the company, and nor do we actually know that that's the case today, and not something that has been disclosed at this point. From my knowledge, this is his sort of first act in some time, but as the CEO of a very major company, a lot of what you do on a regular basis isn't exactly disclosed to the public. So it's not, this isn't to say that this is the first thing he returned to do. This is just the first thing that we really heard about at this stage of the game. So it's hard to know. We're going to seek to kind of hear from Rosa a little bit more. And I think this is something Rosa does need to talk about as far as why. Because Dave Castro is the most well-known face of the company, and has also been the single only director of the CrossFit Games. This is his brainchild. This is what he's developed over the last 15 years. 15 years he's been in this position and in this role, and instrumental in developing and shepherding the sport of CrossFit from its infancy to today. And I think that's something that Eric has to weigh in on and say, hey, these are the reasons why we decided to do this, because we're moving in a different direction. That's kind of what he said. We're moving in a different direction, but what direction is that?
But so based on what he said when he took over, it was a lot of that. It was a lot of not really acknowledging. It was like, hey, glad to be here, stoked to move on kind of stuff. So do we think he's the kind of guy that's going to reveal much at all?
Look, I think it's a fair question to be able to ask Rosa and get an answer from, which is, why'd you get rid of the guy who created CrossFit as a sport? I don't think that's an unfair question, and he doesn't have to answer it. He doesn't have to do anything he wants to, but I think that if he's smart, I think that it's a fair, honest question. It's something that his team should be prepared to articulate. I think that the athletes want to know that, and they want to understand that. I mean, sure, like if you got rid of the coach, or if you got rid of the commissioner of a sport, or if you got rid of the GM, it should be pretty well apparent as to what those reasons are. At this stage of the game, it's left for speculation, and guys like me will probably do our best and speculate, and we'll talk to the people that we know, and we won't speculate just idly. We're not just going to like casually speculate. We'll talk to athletes, we'll talk to some insiders, we'll talk to other people that maybe have talked to Castro, we'll talk to Castro ourselves, and we'll try and put together something. But I think this is something Rosa should address.
Do you think, is your relationship as such with either guy, Castro or Rosa, that they would tell you man to man, this is what happened, however, this is what we're saying publicly?
That is possible. Dave and I have an interesting relationship over the years, and we've had a lot of frank conversations off the record, and some on the record. And he may decide to divulge that. and Rosa may decide to do that too. It depends. It depends on how forthcoming they want to be in this particular circumstance and situation. But I can't imagine that a decision like this is just an aha moment, because it is a very significant and serious decision that has ripple effects that are far-reaching, just beyond who sits in the chair. This goes down to how the season is structured, how it's implemented. It's more than just the workouts, right? The workouts that are done at the Open and then the quarterfinals and then at the games are one aspect of this, but his role in shaping the sport is much more significant than that. I know Rosa knows that and understands that. So I can't imagine this was an idle decision or just an aha moment.
But I mean, you say aha moment like it's a bad thing. These come from deep down aha moments.
Sometimes they do.
I'm sure. Well, let me ask you: when you decided to leave, DC politics and launch this, there probably was an aha moment for you of like, F it, I'm going for it.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, there was sort of aha moments are often not in the moment, right? They're 9/10 of that's the journey, and the journey could take any number of different days or reasons to come to the conclusion. But from a business perspective, I imagine that the leadership had to evaluate this from a business perspective, look at that and say, okay, by what metrics are we judging the performance of the guy who's the director of the games, or are we, dissatisfied or satisfied with that performance? It's a staffing related decision. So it's not, generally speaking, it wouldn't be one thing in this instance, in my opinion. But again, just speculating.
Where do you think the line is on pro Dave, glad he's gone, Dave? What do you think in the community? Is it 50-50?
I've obviously spent a lot of time reading a number of comments on social media and you tend to get a vocal minority on social media, and you also tend to history tends to either look very kind or very awful on people. And in this instance, I think history is looking very kind on Dave because he's the guy that CrossFit loves to hate. He's public enemy number one in CrossFit's eyes, in the sense that he puts us through a lot of pain. But he's also had a lot of antics and public antics over the years that rubbed people one way or the other, or put him in one light or another light. And you're either in one or the other camp. You're either like Dave Castro is the Antichrist, or he's actually a really good guy. And he actually plays both roles pretty well. So like in the same afternoon, it can be both rain and sunshine, depending on your interactions with Dave. So
can I quote you on that? Rain and sunshine? Can we make a t-shirt out of that?
We can. I don't think that would sell very well, but if you want to put the bill, go for it. He's a polarizing figure, and he always has been. He's embraced the polarization of that figure. He's enjoyed the polarization of the figure. His growth on his Instagram has enjoyed the polarization of his figure. And so, with that, it's hard to really measure where people's sentiment is. Now, if all you know about Dave Castro is that he programs workouts, and that's how you're evaluating this, you're going to look at that and you're going to say, in 6 months, do I feel any different about the situation? How they feel about it today is Dave Castro is the most public figure in CrossFit, not Eric Rosa. He's the most well-known, and he's the most prolific, and he's been there, for, I don't know how long he's technically been on staff, but he's been programming games for 15 years. So he's obviously somebody that the athletes have a relationship with, the coaches have a relationship with, industry people like myself have a relationship with. And so what does the average CrossFitter think when they show up at the Open not this one, because they're doing his workouts, which are finished, I presume. But when they show up at the games, maybe this summer, and they look at a different games programming, do they notice anything that's different? And I think that's when we'll really know what does the community feel.
But I thought that Greg's last year, he chopped it down. I thought he was like, yeah, we're not going to rely on this guy anymore.
Yeah. So 2019 games was different, and Greg did have a big hand in programming some of those things. So that was what Greg said to me and to others, was that he had been involved in programming of it and wanted some specific programming of it. And I think he had an influence in that was significant, and he introduced more significant cuts. And I don't know the exact nature of all the details of how they divide and conquer the direction of the games. But let's be clear. I think that Greg got the games that he wanted. I think it's the easiest way of looking at it. That when I talked to Greg at the games of 2019, he was like, "Isn't this game's great?" And you're like, "Sure, Greg." And so I think that Greg got the games that he wanted. So I think that answers your question.
What do we think is next for Dave? Like, what's his options?
Well, I mean, that's really hard to say. He's a very talented guy, and he's shown that talent over his attention to detail with not only the programming of each stage of competition, but his visual attention to detail. You look at some of the advancements he's made on the field of play, and the way he drills down to the specific elements of the game's programming and game's experience in general. So he's obviously a wildly talented guy. He's very detail oriented. He's very smart. So I think those kinds of things are going to lend itself to be involved in anything. But honestly, it would be impossible to guess from a guy like Dave. Number one, because he plays cards very close to the chest. And so if Dave had some other like secret ambitions of building something or doing something, if you weren't extremely close to Dave, you would never know the answer to that. Like he's a very private guy, and he's always been that way. And I think that's a byproduct of his military background, of just never really talking so much about himself personally, but more about the other things he's involved in. I have no idea. Do I see him being in CrossFit? Not really. I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't do nothing for the next year and just hangs out on his ranch. And
we're assuming he's been paid well enough that he could do that.
I think that is the case, but again, with somebody like Dave, it's really hard to know. I mean, I don't see what he drives, and I don't see him taking lavish vacations, and he doesn't post about those things personally on his Instagram account. But so I don't know financially where he's at.
You don't think it'd be the kind of thing where like he would try to work for Rogue or any of those other companies if they wanted him, or I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there.
I don't see him doing that, but I don't know Dave super well personally. We have this interesting professional relationship, which is like, us having our back and forths and stuff. But on a personal level, it's so hard to know where he's thinking or where he's at. I guess the only thing that I could look into or read into is how things went when Greg sort of reorganized the games and really demoted the games from their stature that they were previously at. And during that time frame, you basically saw Dave just, his own Instagram. He just did his own personal thing. It was a lot about shooting and hunting and a lot about other things and nothing about the games. He wasn't talking about the games. He wasn't being vocal about them, the open or anything else. And he kind of just took that in stride and just kind of let it be, and just like didn't really have any public overreaction or any kind of thing like that. So my suspicion is that he'll spend some time to himself and just say, okay, well, we're just going to let this kind of blow over, and then we'll reevaluate what's next for me in my own life. And it could be the case that he still has this deep passion for CrossFit and feels that there's an avenue and an opportunity for him inside of CrossFit, or he could just be like, yeah, I'm done. And I have other opportunities, but the guy's obviously wildly well connected, and there could be plenty of opportunities for him to move outside of the CrossFit sphere and take his 750,000 followers, and I don't know, maybe him and Dana White can do something together. He's who knows.
All right. Well, Justin LoFranco, Morning Checkup, thank you so much for joining me today, buddy.
My pleasure. Yeah, dude. Thanks for having me on. We'll be trying to track this news as it comes out, because it's obviously moving pretty quick, and so we were looking to answer some other key questions, like some of the ones that we were talking about here, which is why and what happens next, right? And I think those are the two big things that people are asking themselves now, which is each of those things. So we're going to seek to try and answer them, and we'll let you guys know as soon as we got it.
Sure. I look forward when I wake up in the morning and check my email. We shouldn't check our emails first thing in the morning. We should probably get centered, do some prayers. But instead, no, I open my mailbox and what do I see? A few spam ads and my morning chalk up every morning right there in my email.
Well, it depends on who you're talking to. We were up there with spam ads. So we'll see you tomorrow morning.